In this video, we want to look at the engineering and the genius behind the Statue of Liberty's design. We hope you enjoy. The Statue of Liberty is probably the most famous statue all around the world. Any ship that gets close to New York City, one of the very first things they see is the Statue of Liberty. Even though Manhattan has ginormous skyscrapers, but the Statue of Liberty stands out that much. More importantly, it's on an island outside of the city, and if it was closer to the skyscrapers, it would have been lost and barely seen, and that makes it much more special. With its base, it has a height of 93 meters, but the statue itself is 46 meters tall, so that makes the base alone somewhat of a tall building. The Statue of Liberty went up in New York City in 1886, 137 years ago. Designing and installing something like this now is a problem, let alone 137 years ago. The most impressive thing is that the height of it was insanely high for its time. Nowadays, you have much taller statue and much bigger, especially in India and China. But you could compare the two like comparing the Empire State Building to Burj Khalifa. When the Empire State Building was built, it was revolutionary because something like this had never been built before. And you can apply the same logic to the Statue of Liberty because it had never been done before. Just like the Empire State, the Statue of Liberty was the tallest statue in the world for decades. The most interesting part about the Statue of Liberty, which a lot of people don't know, this was never an American design, and it wasn't even an American idea. The person that had the idea in the first place was a French politician named Edouard Laboulaye. It was his idea to build a statue like this and gift it to the United States for their independence. It seems like they wanted to give the middle finger to the British. Edouard Laboulaye gave this idea in 1865, but to accept this idea and to actually move forward, it took 5 years, and finally in the year 1870, it was finalized and approved. To design the statue itself, the French government hires Frédéric Auguste Bartholdi. They tell him to design a statue based on the Roman goddess of liberty, called Libertas. Before Bartholdi actually designs the statue itself, he decides to visit New York City to plan it and execute it properly. When Bartholdi visits the United States to plan this out, the United States President at that time, Ulysses Grant, invites him to the White House as well. Bartholdi also chooses a name for this statue. He names it Liberty Enlightening the World, which later on changed in the year 1924 to Statue of Liberty. After Bartholdi gets back to France and tells him what needs to be done and what doesn't need to be done, that's when the project officially started. One of the many things they planned out is that they told the United States government to plan where the statue should go, and also United States is responsible for building a base for this thing. France is gonna build the statue itself, and they're gonna meet each other in New York City. Even though these two were probably the most richest countries in the world at that time, they had a shortage of funds. So they started a fundraiser. The fundraiser was very simple. Both the French government and the United States government would ask their people for money so a statue like this can be built. This is when they tell Bartholdi to design the hand and finish it up so we can put it on display and raise money. The French government first makes some money by showing this. Then the United States was lacking funding because the people didn't know what is happening. This is when they send the hand that was finished to New York City. It seems like the American style was a little bit better for making money. because when they put it on display in New York City, they designed it in a way where you pay 50 cents and you can go up in the torch and hang out up there, which caused a lot of tourists and even New Yorkers themselves to pay and go see that. The interesting part is that this hand was finished 6 years before the statue itself. So the hand was on display in New York City for 6 years. While all this is happening, the Americans are planning out the base and the French are building the statue itself. Since the French saw how successful the hand is in the United States, they finished up the head and the shoulders of the statue and put it on display in Paris. And they did the same thing, that people pay money and see it. And that's a huge fundraiser for this huge project. Until the rest of the body was finished, the French raised more than 250,000 francs for this project. We didn't even talk about what material is being used for this statue. You might not believe it, but the statue is made from copper. You could consider the Statue of Liberty a skyscraper itself. It has a metal frame that holds everything, and copper plates attached to that metal frame. The copper sheets that make the statue are only 2.4 millimeters thick, which is insanely thin, but the design and engineering is done so precisely that it doesn't even look like it's in pieces. It looks like a one-piece statue that's made from stone or even cement. But what year is all of this being done and designed? When the framing of the project is being designed, it's the year 1879. It's interesting to know that at this time, there is no steel beams because they hasn't been properly made yet. Yes, the frame of the Statue of Liberty is made from iron, not steel. Steel beams, of course, are made from steel and much stronger, but at this time, none of these types of metals have been invented. So they were forced to use one of the strongest at that time, which was iron. Either way, the framing of this statue was an ingenious design, and there's nothing like it. But I lied, there is one thing that's like it, because at the same time this is being built, they're also building the Eiffel Tower in Paris. The Eiffel Tower, just like the Statue of Liberty, doesn't use steel beams. It's iron beams that hold this thing up. But it's done so properly and so beautifully that to this day, this thing is standing still and stronger than ever. That's the reason to design the Statue of Liberty's framing, they asked Gustave Eiffel to design it for them. Gustave Eiffel completely designs the framing of it from scratch and orders all the pieces to be made. The framing and the pieces were coming out beautifully, and it's interesting to know that everything is being held together by rivets, hundreds of thousands of rivets to be exact. The pieces that make the statue itself is made up of 300 different pieces made from copper, and they go together on top of the framing like puzzle pieces. And all the copper plates weigh 80 tons. For this size of a statue, that's extremely lightweight, and that's done on purpose. This is the reason they used a very thin material to keep the weight low as possible. Before sending the statue on its way to New York, the French had to make sure it's done properly. So in Paris, they literally assembled the whole statue to make sure everything works correctly. More than 300,000 rivets hold the statue together. Gustave Eiffel was a genius man because even though he was in Paris designing it, he knew that the New York harbor has high winds, so he designed the statue in a way where it could withstand all that wind for an extremely long period of time without being damaged. That's the reason that the top of this statue can move up to 10 inches and nothing will be damaged. Doing something like this in the later years of the 1800s is insane because nobody would think of that. But Gustave Eiffel knew what he was doing, and he was a master at his craft, which is why he's very well known for designing two of the most famous structures in the world. In 1884, the statue is pretty much done, except the right hand that made its way to New York 6 years beforehand. Since the French government didn't have the right hand, they made sure everything is done correctly and decided to disassemble it so it can be finally put into crates and sent to New York. Bartholdi chose 4 different spots to put the statue in and told the US government to choose any of this for this. The US government exclusively chose this island because it was the only place that they actually owned. The other 3 places they would have to purchase from the landowner, and they didn't want to do that, which is why this island is chosen. We were too busy talking about the statue itself, we forgot about the base. Because the base itself was an extremely hard task to do. A base that has a height of over 27 meters, and at that time it held the world record with the most concrete used in a building. But the key word is at that time, because nowadays you have a lot of structures that hold more concrete, but at that time it was insane. Bartholdi first said that the base of the statue should be made from 100% granite. The US government says, "Are you high? This is gonna cost billions of dollars," which is why they came up with the design to use a concrete base and then make it look pretty with granite pieces on top of it, so it doesn't turn out extremely expensive. The rebars used in today's concrete is made from steel, but back then, just like we said, there was no steel. So the rebar and the reinforcement used in the concrete of this base is made from iron again, but it was done in a way where it's beautifully done, which holds it up to this day. When the base was finally done, on top of it they built a square structure where the framing of the statue itself bolts down to. And after the framing and the foundation and the base was finished, this is when the statue started to finally go up. This was the right hand of the Statue of Liberty holding a torch, and it was without its body for 6 years. And finally, in the year 1886, it was time for the right hand to join the main body. An insane copper statue was finally up. At this time, the statue itself looks like copper, just like this, and it does not look green when it's brand new. It stays this color for 30 years and slowly rusts away to this green color you know today. Copper rusting turns green, unlike iron or any other type of metal. The engineers exactly knew this would happen, which is why they chose copper. Copper rust does not destroy the structure like iron or steel. When copper rusts, it only changes color. It does not hurt its durability. You might ask, why didn't they choose another type of material so it doesn't rust? But you have to understand that copper rusting is actually character or patina, rather than destroying it like metal rusting on a car.